Everyone is a star child, made of stardust and the infinite potential of the universe. This extraordinary fearless something in each of us clamors for freedom from the bonds of fear, conformity, and an ordinary life. Welcome to Dr. Durr's Living in the Sweet Spot, where practical tools and solutions from the intersection of mind-body medicine, science, and spiritual well-being awaken and empower you to live out your infinite potential, to live life in the sweet spot. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Dr. Lyn A. Durr. And today we are going to be talking about those things, of course, that matter to us and in a very deep, meaningful way. Again, we look at the importance of brain health and transformative thinking as the doorway to demonstrating our greatest infinite potential and living life in the sweet spot. And today I am going to be joined by Dr. Lyn Prashant. Dr. Prashant has a PhD in somatic thanatology. She's also a bereavement specialist, integrative grief therapist, and the founder of Degriefing Counseling and an educational director of an ADEC fellow in thanatology. So Lyn, she has a saying that that I find deeply touching, again, meaningful, and that I'm sure that you'll find moving and helpful as we talk about grief and how it is the most available yet untapped emotional resource for personal transformation. Lyn, welcome so much to the show today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And, I am so happy to have you here. As a psychiatrist, and of course, I see children, adolescents, and adults. One of the things that I've discovered is through this life is it's one of constantly what I call catch and release, right? That
I like that.
You like that, right?
I like that very much.
It's everything in this life is impermanent, right? And because it's impermanent, it's here for whatever time it's here, and then it's gone. But in our attachment and difficulty moving through things, oftentimes we get stuck. And I think that's for a variety of reasons, but I think it's because we are so attached, we don't let go, and we don't know how to grieve. So again, I'm so happy to have you here today so we can have this important conversation, right?
Yes, I think it's really important. And socioculturally, we really don't integrate this concept that's ever present of loss, and then the body's response, the somatic response to loss. And we call it grief, then the period of bereavement. I want to touch on something you just said. I think it's quite essential and important. It's the concept of being stuck. And I work with it in a certain way. When the old no longer applies and the new is not just formed or obvious or clear to us, we're not sure which reality, we realize we're straddling two realities. Mm-hmm. The prior reality that no longer exists due to whatever's been lost, and the new reality that takes time and self-care to focus on, because loss promotes scattered and shattered thinking. And so when we use our minds to figure out how to help our broken hearts when we experience the concept of loss, then what we need to do is relate to the mind-body connection and actually normalize things. The loss was then, the future is over in the distance. Where am I now? Am I stuck? Really? Am I processing? Am I actually feeling so much emotional and physical discomfort that I'm not sure what to do for myself? So, on some level, if we use the word stuck and then we transform it into working through, being with, breathing into, and questioning, wondering. I'm wondering what's happening right now. I love the word wondering because it's invitational and it embodies possibility with the exploration of the question, what am I wondering about? And I just want to comment that our answers reside in our skillful questions. So we actually, by using inquiry, we are talking with ourselves and addressing what's going on in our physical bodies.
So, Dr. Lyn,
Yes.
oh, you said a few mouthfuls there.
Just a few.
um, so you know what? I certainly think that what you said is really important about, wondering, or another way that people talk about it is curiosity.
Yes.
It's because it places you in a mindset and a way of, as I'd like to say, engaging with life
Mm.
that
Mm.
it keeps you engaged with life. It keeps you um, again wondering or asking, you know, what's next, or how is this here to help and serve me? And how is this here to, even if it's challenging, if it doesn't feel good, even if it feels really horrible,
Mm.
what can I gain from this? How can I grow? How can I transform? How can I have a greater demonstration of my infinite being? And so I think that that's really key. And also, of course, we gonna have, again, you said several mouthfuls there, so we're gonna have to go back and unpack some of that, right? so
Absolutely.
so
Ab-
I think a good place um to maybe kind of also kind of begin that unpacking would be, what do you think are, I guess I would simply say, the causes of why we struggle with grief? Why is that so hard for us?
Okay. Fabulous place to start to clarify. Grief is actually a phrase, a name, a noun, an experience that encompasses so many other aspects of what we feel and what it means to us. And what you're talking about also is meaning making. How can we make meaning of an experience that, as you say, doesn't always feel good? In fact, oftentimes feels awful, painful,
Mm-hmm.
inexplicably uncomfortable.
Yes.
And so, if we ask ourselves, what is this that's going on for me? What are the feelings? How can I identify this very unfamiliar? All loss can be brought down to the loss of the familiar. It was a moment ago, it no longer is. Is that the puppy that ran away? Is that something we heard in the news? Is that a loss of a neighbor, a friend, a dear family member? How loss impacts us is very individual and yet very generic because we're all the same and we're all different.
Right.
And
So
so,
if I was going to say, I'd like to add something here if I could.
certainly, sure.
Um, I think not only is it the loss of the unfamiliar, I think it's the loss of that which we find we now feel threatened because I no longer have it, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
Somehow, like you said, it either offered comfort, it offered protection, it offered um, and I know we're going to get into this, but I just want to just mention this a little bit right now. Is some years ago, a dear friend of mine um, transitioned, and it was fairly suddenly. And we had known each other since was college. We're very close, and he was living the life, right? And when I say living the life, he we both being collegiate track athletes, and so he was coaching Olympic hopefuls. He's traveling the world, he's doing what he loves. He's got the wife and the 3 kids, he's living the life, man. And he suddenly was hospitalized having these GI symptoms. And uh, pretty quickly, they actually figured out he had pancreatic cancer. And then that was August. And the end of by October, he was gone.
Yeah.
And so I know in my struggling with the grief around that, one of the things I identified was I was like, what's going on with me? Because in my spiritual beliefs, I know better, meaning the soul is eternal, and that's just the shell. So one of the things I figured out was the fact that I was very closely identified with him. So if he's living all this wonderful life and suddenly gone, what does that mean for me? And that's what I mean when I'm saying that I think that one of the issues is not only the loss of the familiar, but somehow we find that loss threatening.
Well, an interesting aspect to look at is primary loss and secondary loss, because every primary has quite a number of secondaries. So we look at the relationship of what we've lost to recognize how it impacts our safety, security, sense of well-being. Is it a relationship? Now, in the case that you just described, my instinct is to suggest that he was most likely a provider for that family and 3 children. So it's not just the loss of dad, the loss of partnership. In this case, there's an assumption of marriage, 3 children. So a
Yes.
loss of a spousal relationship, the loss perhaps of the primary breadwinner, of the hopes and dreams that daddy would be there to raise the kids and teach the kids,
And
the
walk his daughter down the aisle.
and walk his daughter down the aisle.
Yes.
So when we work with people, we normalize. How is this impacting you?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about your losses. What are the primaries and then the resulting secondaries? Because the mind doesn't know how to feel. The body's the barometer of our truth. And the mind doesn't like unanswered questions. So it'll gladly answer us, whether it's accurate or not.
So you know what? Can you again kind of unpack that part that you said that the body is the barometer of the feelings and the mind does not know how to feel?
Okay, so let's use your example. Let's
Yeah.
use your story.
Yeah.
You knew here
Uh-huh.
that everything's impermanent,
Yes.
that we're here. In fact, in a session the other day, I said to one of my clients, I think actually we don't own anything, we rent it.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Okay, so your mind gets that, yet your heart likes him in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Your heart loves this being.
Yes.
So when your heart aches and your mind says, excuse me, everything's impermanent, that doesn't soothe the heart. The
Right.
heart says, okay, let's deal with what's so. My heart aches for my friend. I yearn for him. He represented a reflection for me. He
Mm-hmm.
was a colleague. He knew what we went through
Yes.
to get where we always hoped to be. And he achieved a level of success, well-being, and comfortable placement in his life. And his body then said, something's not right. And the mind says, how can that be? And the body says, I can't survive this. I'm not well. Namaste, I've got to go.
Yes.
The love doesn't stop. What's challenged is the attachment. You
Yes.
want him in your life. His children want him in their life. They still love him.
Mm-hmm.
The heartbreak has to do with broken attachments and learning to, last piece, change relationship to the loss, because we don't get over loss. We change relationship to it.
Right. And so the other thing too that again, as my friend, and someone who we'd known each other as long as we had, decades, right?
Uh-huh.
Again, what I was also missing was his counsel, right? His encouragement, the way he supported me, and in this new endeavor, because he was trying to get me to do this, even back then. I think he transitioned in 2016.
Uh-huh.
So even in supporting me in doing this and encouraging me and
Mhm.
linking the success of being a collegiate athlete to doing what calls to me next, right? How they are, it's just a different demonstration of the same principles. So that wisdom, right, is also missed. Um, but I do want to go back to again that question again about the distinction about how the mind doesn't feel, but the body holds the emotions, because I think that's a very important um, you know uh, distinction and understanding to be had.
So the mind in and of itself is a programmed entity full of whatever it's witnessed, seen, imprinted, heard, intuited. The mind itself is a source of information, a resource to be used appropriately. My mind cannot relate to the fact when my heart aches. It can give me reasons why it doesn't need to ache, why it doesn't have to ache, why it shouldn't ache. It can't feel it, therefore, it can't fully embrace the experience. So when people say to me, perhaps in one of my sessions, I don't know how to figure this out,
Mhm.
I say the mind can't figure this out. We have to trust the body to tell us. And there's a wonderful colleague in my field, and his name is Dr. Eugene Gendlin. And he was at the University of Chicago.
Okay.
And he introduced a concept into his courses, and that is, what is it that the body's trying to tell us? What is the felt sense? Use our minds to identify what is this felt sense, and then watch the body understand that we're tuning in and then shift. And he called that a bodily shift. So when a bereaved individual whose thinking is scattered and shattered due to grief, due to all of the hormones that are being coursing through our bodies when we're grieving, because the endocrine system is coping with such shock and pain, we must trust the body and breathe into it. And that's where the breath comes in. Because the interesting thing is the body is actually what determines our lives, not our minds. Yes, the mind body connection, the mind is the body has a mind. Yet
So
it's the body, it's the body.
you say it's the body that determines.
The difference between life and death is one breath.
Yes.
Therefore, the breath is something magical. And this is a tool because nostril breathing keeps panic and anxiety at a minimum, aerating our circuitry, influencing our pineal gland, which is a master regulator, and the third chakra, if we're going to integrate the yogic principles that are ancient. The sixth chakra, excuse me, right here, the Anya chakra. So we have the pineal gland.
So, and for those that are unfamiliar, what does that chakra do?
They're
What does it
energy.
represent? I know, but what is it? Right, it's the chakras are energy centers, but what does that particular chakra represent for those who may be the unfamiliar and uninitiated?
Okay, it's the center of intuition.
Okay.
Although the yogis tell us that we have intuitive capabilities in every cell, but yes, it's the center of intuition, and it's also The yogis say we have two eyes that look out and one eye that looks in.
Mm-hmm.
And that is called quite often the third eye,
Yes.
as our center of trusting our inner world and the wisdom of the body
Yes.
to go inward. And we're a very outer directed culture.
Yes. Absolutely. So you were saying about the importance of the breath, and of course, one of the things it does is activates when you slow, it activates the parasympathetic system, nervous system, which is the
Absolutely.
calming system, right? So you were
Yes.
saying about the about the importance of the breath as, I guess, an indicator of how the body. Again, we were talking about how the body holds
Yes.
emotions.
So the parasympathetic nervous system. So we have the autonomic, just for our viewers, and then there are two parts of the autonomic. And when I teach this, I use alliteration. So my last name's Prashant. So it's Prashant, peaceful, parasympathetic. And that's what we want, is to spend as much time. Conversely, here it is alliteration, sympathetic and stress. We want to spend more time in the parasympathetic. And if we make the exhalation when we're breathing just a little bit longer than the inhalation, we are encouraging our system to remain in the parasympathetic side, the peaceful, the place where, and the nose is very interesting because each nostril represents both lunar and solar, nighttime and daytime. And
Yin
here's
and yang,
alliteration.
right?
Here
Yin
we,
and yang.
here we are. That's, well, hatha in hatha yoga, sun, moon. So
Yes.
it's all about, we're going for homeostasis.
Yes.
We're seeking and searching and inquiring, how do we stay balanced? Because we're on a planet moving through space. Gravity's holding us on, and the world is chaotic. How
Yes.
do we find peace in the midst of chaos? The breath's the greatest tool.
Yes, and as the teacher in the old Kung Fu series used to say, balance grasshopper, balance.
There it is. Not bad, fell down. How quickly get up?
Yes.
Yeah, balance,
Yes.
balance.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, because I think it is important that folks understand in terms of what the importance is of the body as it means in terms of relates to emotions. So so again, you were talking about in terms of the breath, right? And it's the breath allows someone to connect with the emotions in the body in what way?
I'm going to use your phrase, catch and release.
Yes.
Inhale, feel oneself. If we inhale 1, 2, 3, exhale 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm.
What we're allowing is a release of held information, tension, and the breath itself is just the most healing tool. And so my students will say to me, what do you mean nostril breath is one of the key pieces of our work? It is, because when a child catharts, they will most likely, with fire in the belly, okay, and then we consciously, we're counterbalancing the fact that we are sentient beings and can feel, and those of us who are empaths, who we can register anything within quite a wide radius. Yes. And have to continually release what's not ours. Because mirror neurons that empaths have, we can feel other people's emotional states. We can join them and be with them. And that's one of the tools that hospice workers bring, doctors bring, psychiatrists bring. We know we can join the other and support them and learn to release what it is that we feel by being with them. That's why people hold their breath often.
So I think, two things that I wanted to mention. One is, I think part of what also contributes to grief is there's a lack of knowing, or maybe a lack of acceptance even that we are connected to everything, right?
Mm.
And the reason that we are connected to everything is because of the fact that everything is made of energy, right? And if everything is made of energy, then even in Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared, basically all of it's saying is that
Yes.
energy and matter are interchangeable.
Yes. And
That's
can't
really good.
yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so because it's interchangeable, that means that it's just at its core, everything is energy. It's just organized to appear in an infinite number of physical forms, including you and I. So the
Yes.
connection occurs not in the physical form, but in the energy or the life force that animates that form or all forms. And it's that way. It's the connection of the energy. Some people call it spirit, some people call it soul, some people, universal consciousness, whatever
Right.
words you want to use. Is it's that's where that's where the connection is. And also the first law of thermodynamics says energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It's just transforms, i.e.
Yes.
changes forms. And
Yes.
so in that, again, who we are is never destroyed, right? It just is moving in and out of form. And I think in the same way, I also encourage people as a way to say, when especially folks that say, I don't like change. I go, if you don't like change, you don't like life. Like, what? No, I like life. No, actually, when you say you don't like change, I said, because if you take a breath in, that's a change. Breathe out, that's a change. So life is changing in every moment.
Yes. And it's my sense that that's the only thing that's truly constant.
It's
It
change.
is change. And I would agree with you. And so let's suppose that there's a reason that most people will say, I don't like change.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like living in the don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I want something as clear and organized to suit me.
Oh, good
And
luck with that. I
well,
tell
good
people,
luck with that.
if that's what you want, you came to the wrong planet.
Well, you see, and that's it. Isn't that the existential struggle? Isn't that what we work toward, is understanding or having a sense of presence on the planet that we can relax into, like getting comfortable in our own skin? Like when we're teenagers and we're struggling with everything because everything is changing so quickly, so new.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually wanted to mention this. The teenagers that I'm working with at this time, and wonder if you're experiencing something similarly. The 3 years of isolation for the growth that happens during adolescence, I have been finding is promoted a lot of new age losses for, let's say, an average child between 13 and 16 or 14 and 17. And
When
so,
you say new age losses, what do you mean?
well, COVID for us, for example, for those 3 years that kids either had to wear masks or couldn't go to socialize at school and extracurricular events were canceled.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually what I consider, there's some losses that I find have been around forever. And that is actually the loss of a loved one.
Okay.
When I look at what's going on socioculturally with global grief, or with the new levels of unknowns, such as a child who, let's say the older sibling, spent all their years in high school, and the next child has 3 years where they couldn't be socializing. So, what I'm saying is, as culture changes, our work changes to meet people in their particular losses, the losses that they may not even be able to relate to other generations.
Um, yes, and I think, to your point, there are some of the losses that again tend to be more subtle. other ones, more obvious. Again, I think that why this has been so difficult, especially for the younglings, is that their sense of identity is still forming. And I also think that identity is grounded again in the physical, and especially when you're talking about adolescence, that they are moving away from their parents, right? And then they are connecting and moving more towards, their peers, both in terms of identity, in terms of hopes, dreams, social units, in terms of who they spend their time with. And so now, and especially again, if it's, and if home is a place that they don't find happiness or joy in.
Yes.
So now that they're just adrift, and again don't have the tools and the knowledge to look within and to find their sense of identity in that which is eternal, right?
Yes.
That which never changes.
Okay, yes.
So I think that and that's certainly true for adults as well, right? Is that when your identity is grounded in the physical things, which are always impermanent, that are always changing, that come and go, the idea, especially when they're grounded in your results, right? Did I do this well? Or basically what I do, or what was done to me?
Yes.
That you're a human doing, not a being, right?
Yes. Yes. Right with you.
Right.
Yeah.
That which then is always changing, then your identity and value and worth are always changing. It's a perpetual roller coaster. And so I think that is particularly the struggle, for the younglings. It's true for the adults, but especially for the younglings. And I think, so again, that brings us back to you, and then, and also, and thanatology, excuse me. Yes. I like the word. But so again, for the folks who are unfamiliar with that term, and is a necessary part of moving through life, just what's that, share us thanatology.
Well, thanatology is the in-depth study of bereavement, of the dying process, of the actual death itself, and the information surrounding each of those, let's say, periods of transition in our life. So when a person studies, the Association of Death Education is a body that certifies thanatologists. And when we study that, we are trained to tune into the primary loss, as I mentioned before, and really address all of the adjunct experiences going on around it. Because as a culture, as a multicultural culture, a melting pot, let's just use the US right now, we don't really talk about loss. We don't let our kids talk about loss. Some families, of course, do. Yet, as a cultural experience, loss is often a very shocking, not often surprising, because if somebody has a long-term illness, we're often not surprised when they stop breathing, but death is always a shock. And so if we, as
and of course, that's because the mind is kind of designed to not focus on that, and not only to not focus on it, to really kind of be in denial of it.
Yes, well, there's Kubler-Ross. There's
yes.
Kubler-Ross in terms of, the 5 stages that are so often misused were really for people facing their own mortality, and the bargaining and the depression and the acceptance and the movement within those. The truth is, culture has taken those and applied it to all kinds of losses and all kinds of experiences, although her intention was very specific. It was for people facing their mortality, such as your beloved friend might have been pondering as he realized the severity of his diagnosis. What we're talking about truly is the attachment. We don't stop loving. I lost a husband quite young and my sister quite young. I love them still.
Yes.
They're in this metaphoric fifth chamber of my heart. And we know there's two oracles and two ventricles. So they've relocated now after years of working with missing them. On their birthdays, on my birthday, I miss them. I still love them. We can continue to love, and grief is not the price we pay for love. Grief is what happens when attachments are broken and we yearn for what was.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you, is the loss of, because I know you said you describe him as your young husband, and
yes.
then and I like to use the word the transition of your young husband and sister. Is that what set you on this path?
Yes. When my husband Mark, he died at a young age of 36, and we were very, very fortunate to have been invited to the Living Dying Project after reading Stephen Levine's book, Who Dies. Mark wrote to the project and they invited us to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we spent 8 months there and we explored conscious living and conscious dying. And he died at 36. And I worked with the experts in the field, Stephen Levine, Andrea, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And it was as though that was the gift he handed me, which was my life's work. And so I honor him every day, and I honor my sister Donna, because a very interesting question was asked of me when my sister died. Well, you're the grief counselor. Who counsels the grief counselor?
Yes.
And of course, I turned to my teachers and my colleagues.
Yes.
And it required me to walk my talk. And it taught me how to be there for others, because service is really its own reward. Yes. Because, Balan, we can't fix, rescue, or save anybody. We can just serve them with our heart, with our presence, with our training and our intentional, conscious connection. We serve others. And that's a big teaching, because many of the families that I work with, they want to save that person who's dying or fix what's wrong. And that's a struggle of, again, there's the word denial. Can they be there with? And many get caught in doing for in hopes they can change what's happening. So honest, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, and actually, to be honest with you, that's been the greatest struggle of my whole career. Probably one of the greatest struggles of my whole career is that trying to save, trying to help, and people not having the desire to make the shifts. Some people do, and some people don't. So I think, again, so then really what we're talking about is acceptance, right? The acceptance that this is what it is in this moment. Acceptance, and I think that's the other thing that people confuse, is acceptance is not approval
or agreement.
Right. It's not approval or agreement or sanctioning. What it is just, it's the acknowledgement that this is what it is at this moment in time. Tell people, if I spill the milk, you can't unspill the milk, right? The milk is spilled. You need to acknowledge, accept that it's spilled.
Yes. Right? I want to add a piece. I think this is fabulous.
Okay.
When a client or a bereaved individual says to me, I'll never accept that he died. I'll never accept how he died. It's whatever they're refusing to accept. I ask them, without accepting, can you acknowledge that that's what's so? Because acknowledgement, for all the reasons you just said, culturally with language, the semantics, people often think if I accept it, I'm condoning it, I'm allowing it. It's not that. it's where are we? This is what's happening. Let's just acknowledge. Then what's our next step together?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the milk is spilt.
Mm-hmm.
What do I want to do about it? What now? What next? And uh, there is, as you were talking, I wanted there's this book, When Breath Becomes Air. Even the
Yes.
title is gorgeous.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Paul Kalinathy. Yes,
Yes.
who, for those who may be unfamiliar,
Yeah.
um, was a neurosurgeon, and neurosurgery is, in many respects considered certainly a pinnacle of medicine, because of the amount of training and the demands and the rigor. And so he was about to finish his training, and begin, as an attending and a neuroscientist, and just, about to really kind of begin that part, as his training was ending, and was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And so of course now everything shifts, for him and his wife, who was also a physician who was completing her residency. And one of the things that he discovered is that even though he was dying, that he was still living while he was dying. So one of the things then that you brought up was, in terms of your time in New Mexico, was then the question, and so then what is conscious dying?
Our focus at the Living Dying Project was to assess moment to moment the fact that I was with Mark, we were newlyweds, we were young, early 30s, mid 30s by the time. I was 35 when he died at 36. It was the exploration of what was so, that there was disease in the body, yet his spirit, his mind was still active and engaged. And what could he do with what he knew about himself to make the most out of being alive while he witnessed the degradation of his young body? And working with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and working with Stephen and Andrea Levine, we would be challenged. In fact, let me quote Elizabeth here, and I'm not off point, I'm really answering your question. I said to her, Elizabeth, it's not fair. He's so young. And she was 5 feet tall. I'm a bit taller. And so she looked at me over her glasses like this, and she said, young woman, somebody told you life was fair, you poor girl. And so we dealt with the unfairness of the fact that our life as we knew it was coming to an end. And what was my life about that I wasn't dying, although our life together was. So conscious living was really walking delicately between the concepts and the lines, and what did we need to say to one another, and how we were protecting one another rather than speaking what our truth. And I remember I asked him at one point, I said, what am I to do with my life when you die? Because on a deep level, I realized I'm not dying. He's dying. And of course, the unknown quotient of the universe, who knows? And he looked at me and he said, well, how about if you learn to love everything and everyone as you love me? I thought, whoa, I really asked him that, and he answered. So how am I going to do that? And so my work was...
Be careful what you ask for.
That's really true. So my work is serving people in difficulty, in stress. If I couldn't fix him, and I couldn't save my sister, and I couldn't rescue myself from what was happening, then the only place that it catapulted me to was service. How can I be present, take care of me, and give the best I can of who I am to those who come on my path or cross my path? So
So,
conscious living, conscious dying.
okay. And to your point, I think that many people, what I call it, don't recognize that they are powerful. Not only have power, but are powerful. And that power stems from, again, the energy that we are
Mm,
and our ability to choose, right? Not choose for you, but choose for me.
right,
And
right.
that um, obviously when you're little and you're young, and I think a lot of people also don't make the transition from being the small, weak, dependent, vulnerable little self to the adult who is now, you know, large, strong, powerful, able to choose for themselves far more than the little one could.
Right.
And therefore they're not and they're independent. They're not dependent the way they were when they were little. And so one of the things I then ask people, do you need somebody to pee and poop for you? Do you need somebody to pee, poop, and breathe for you? And obviously, I'm not talking about those who are ill and need assistance with that. I'm talking about just by and large, is that true? And the answer is no, but we often fail to realize that. So my life was not at this point as an adult is not dependent upon you. We can come together and we can walk together, but my existence is not dependent upon you the way it was. And even as a small child, I tell people, parents, they never have full control over their infants. Again, you don't control when they pee, poop, and sleep. So everybody always has some level of independence, and no one ever, fully controls you. And I think that that it's important for people to have that awareness. I
Mm,
think that it's important then. I think also, again, because the brain is wired not to acknowledge the truth of death, but I also say to people, who came here with a guaranteed expiration date? I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody that
I'm
came here.
very interesting because in one of Stephen Levine's seminars where I was assisting it with my body workers, he looked at the audience and he said, "Okay, who here would like to sell their death? Never going to die. How much do you want for that?" The audience just froze. It was like, "Whoa, what's he doing?" And his point was there is a natural rhythm. We're born, we live our lives to whatever length, degree of information provided us and comfort or lack thereof. And there are no guarantees. And it's really about being present. And you brought up a point when, again, I'm going to reference your beloved friend, colleague who died from pancreatic cancer.
Yes, Ian.
Uh, Ian, let's name Ian and let's
Ian,
give
yes.
Ian the due respect. One of the mediators of mourning
Mhm.
by Dr. J. William Warden is the nature of relationship. So we're talking about children being dependent to whatever degree. We're also talking about families. So when we talk about loss and we take a look at the survivors of this profound experience of loss and the subsequent grief, we want to know what was the nature or what is the nature. So in the case of Ian's children, it was a dependent relationship
Okay.
and there had to be a shift there. So the nature of the relationship, the amount of contact, there are many mediators that help us meet the bereaved exactly where they are.
So
Yes, please.
yeah, I'm sorry. We, I just wanted to say this again to your point is Um, I also had the gift and the blessing from my grandfather. At the time, he had COPD. He was getting close to dying. And when he died, at the time he died, I was 6 months pregnant. And for me, at that, if I got too upset, I was gonna vomit. And I was saying to myself, in terms of going to the funeral, you know what, you're gonna have to pull yourself together because that ain't a good look. You have to get under control, girl, because that ain't a good look. And when I got to was there at the funeral, and I leaned over and kissed him a goodbye, I had this amazing awareness, which was, that ain't my granddaddy. That's just the shell that he's in, right? And it was in that recognition, and then I think also in alignment with subsequently going to medical school and becoming a physician, and I don't want to say used to, but in some ways understanding, I think, is a better of saying that the body dies. But who my grandfather was, over time I learned he's eternal. And a few years ago, I remember I was standing at the sink in my bathroom, and I could feel him standing next to me. I could feel his presence, and I felt that a couple times. And then I remember it sharing over time with people about, feeling, I said, my grandfather was standing next to me. And then I had this aha, which was, but he ain't got no legs, fool. He can't be standing next to you. He has no legs. He has no legs. So again, just affirmation that he's a presence. He's energy. He's a soul that is eternal, not ground to a body. Also free from the body. He's now able to do those things which he could never do with the restrictions of a physical body.
Absolutely.
So we're having to wrap up here, and I just want to say, just if you could give maybe a couple, 2 or 3 things quickly that people can do in terms of helping, because I know other people need to understand loss is not just restricted to this. There's obviously there's job loss. There is when you move from childhood, any transition, right? Loss of marriage,
Yes.
divorce, all of these can be transitions or losses, and what things people can do to deal with their grief. And of course, we're gonna have you come back so we can talk about this some more.
That would be an honor. I have so much I'd love to share, and I'd love to touch on a few things to honor your question here.
Okay.
There's a concept called STUGS. Okay. There's sudden temporary upsurges of grief, or temporal, either interchangeable. And it is the body's acclimation. It's a kind of upsurge of emotion that's stimulated by anything. It could be a sight, a sound, a taste, a smell. Mm-hmm. In caring for the body, the self-care, we're going to redefine the word selfishness to be a positive thing. Care of the self. Mm-hmm. Let's take care of this vehicle, this body. Let's agree that, yes, we need to take care. So what can we do?
Yes.
I have some things, little tools called somatic of the body, quick tips. Nostril breathe, run one's hands under purely cold water, shake them out because the hands are an extension of the heart and they hold. Sit quietly with the photo of the loved one or whatever's been lost, and focus on the meaning and presence, the experience of having that person or experience in one's life. And if one can, find some gratitude because everything is impermanent. Put on favorite music and dance around your living room, whether it's Bruno Mars or the Beatles or Crosby, Stills or Marvin Gaye, Michael Jackson.
Hip hop.
Just move it, because the body needs movement. Yes. And so by doing that, also change the endocrine balance of hormones, the increase of breath. If we start taking care of the body and we trust that the body is the barometer of our truth, and we let our minds inform us, and yet we don't take everything just because the mind says it doesn't mean it's so. and learn to live with this mind-body connection, then day by day, step by step in the bereavement process, even if I lost my favorite glasses or my beloved husband, it's lost, just different degrees of grief will occur with different losses. So self-care and normalizing. I'm not victimized by loss. Loss is part of the human condition.
Yes.
I was a day younger yesterday.
It's part of the human experience.
That's right.
Catch and release.
Catch and release. I love it.
Release.
Fabulous. Fabulous.
Yes, thank you. So if someone if the audience wants to connect with you, how do they do that?
My website is Degriefing, Degriefing, which is an oxymoron in honor of George Carlin, because grief is part of the human experience. Degriefing.com. And on my website's a way to find me, send me a contact. I will talk to anybody who wants to really, Lyn, tell me about your work. Are you the right person for me? 15 minutes, 20 minutes, my gift to whomever calls, always. Always.
All right. Well, it has been such a delight, and I appreciate again that what you're saying to people is to go within, tune within, connect to your body and what you are feeling, what it's trying to tell you, as a way to work through, to move forward, through whatever it is that you're experiencing, it through the losses, through the transitions, through change.
And it also honors our loved ones who can no longer be with us. If we have the gift
in the physical body, in the
that's
physical
right,
body.
In the physical. I just mean physical.
Yes.
If I take care of this body because my sister Donna no longer has a body to take care of, then I'm honoring what I learned from her by treating myself with the love that I shared with her and still share.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, I want to thank you for having this conversation with me today. While the topic may be challenging for some, for me, it has definitely been a delight. You are a delight, and so warm-hearted, and so, I think a balm to those who have the privilege to connect with you, to engage with you. And again, so thank you so much. I deeply appreciate it. And again, we're going to do what I call push the pause button, so that we'll continue at another time. And
I'm honored.
Yes, and it means namaste, which is the greatness or the divine within me acknowledges the greatness and divine within you. And so to everyone who's joined us, we thank you so much. We appreciate you. We hope that you have learned and engaged in a way that's meaningful for you. And I am your host, Dr. Lyn Prashant, awakening and empowering you to live out your infinite potential, to live life in a sweet spot. Thank you for joining us today in the sweet spot. Share, follow, and like us on social media. To learn more, please visit balinadurmd.com, spelled BALINADURRMD.com. Join us next week, and remember, when you heal your mind, all things are possible.